Everybody, welcome. Good Friday morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're watching us, gang. It's your saltwater guide with another phenomenal podcast for you all today. Right there above my shoulder, you see Marley. He's got himself a big bowl of brand new mealworms, so he's fired up. But I am fired up like you can't even believe. We got Scott Manson back on the show, and he just got done writing another book about lures and fishing the surface iron in this one. So this is going to be a great show today. We got so many great memories coming from the last book he wrote. And I know when we get to talking about this book, I know the memories are going to come flying in. My dad, the old timers on the boats. It's going to be a great show. I can guarantee you that. So kick back, relax, get ready for this show. But before we start, it's Deckhand Sports Friday. We always talk about Deckhand Sports on Friday. We have a great little video to show you during the show today of the new Deckhand Sports coffin. It's a spectacular bag that you blow up. You'll get to see everything about it. It's really a cool deal. And Dave's always thinking outside the box, always coming up with something new and different for our industry to keep our fish as fresh as they possibly can. And also those of you that are hunters and fishermen, it's keeping the game fresh. And you're going to see that today on the show. So we have so much to talk about. There's no way Scott and I are going to get through this in an hour, but we're going to do the best we can. And everybody, thank you, Elliot, for everything you do for us. It's been a phenomenal year. And I want to thank you and Erica. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy day after Boxing Day. And let's get this show started. Scott, get in here. Hey, buddy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks for having me again.
I am super fired up today, boy. Last year we did this right before the PCS show. This year we got a couple of months before the PCS show, but that'll be just in time for when all these books come to your house, right?
Yeah, the Tady book did great. So got just enough money where I was like, let's do another one, part 2.
How wonderful. And so the concept of this, the last book was all about Tady and the history of Tady Lures and how they came to be and everything about that. Now, this is kind of in your wheelhouse and my wheelhouse. I really don't like fishing the iron if it's not a surface iron. I like to watch the reaction by it. I love to watch those big calicos like you and Benny do when you go fishing with Benny on coastal charters, and you see the ball of brown chasing that surface iron.
Nothing better.
Are those big willows when they're chasing it? So let's talk about surface iron for a while.
Yeah. Right? When I was selling the Tady book, you know, everybody's like, "Oh my God, I love this book. Thank you so much," all that kind of stuff. But people would come up and go, "But the book we really want is a book about every single lure company that's in Southern California history." And to me, I wrote the Tady book for myself, you know. So this book, you guys asked for it, you got it. So this is for you guys because this is what everybody wanted. So yeah, you guys saw the cover. Here's the, I got 5 books shipped to me last night. So here is the cover right here. And those same jigs are on the back there as well. So you guys asked for it. Here it is. 295 pages on this one. Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. So how many different lure companies were you able to discover during this time of putting this together?
It's so when I initially thought this, I'm like, okay, I'll do 60 companies and it'll be super easy because it's just going to be a survey. I'm just going to do 1 to 2 pages, you know, 3-4 pages on each company. I ended up with double that. So I ended up with 120 companies. And while a lot of the companies have 1 and 2 pages, you know, Starman has like 20 pages. Salas has like 15 pages. So some of the big companies got big chunks. And I wanted the book to be like 120 pages, and I ended up with 295 again. So it's another monster. And for those of you guys that got the first one, it's the same dimension, same color, everything. So it's eventually going to be a 3-volume set, but this one's supposed to match right next to your Tady book. So in your man cave, on your yacht, wherever you got it.
Yeah, and then so as you started to go down the rabbit hole, how far back did you go?
Yeah, so I had to cut it off somewhere. And to me, 1952 is the year that I started the book. And that's because there's a couple companies, Starman, Mac Lures, that are started at that time. And I go to 1982 to kind of keep it a nice 30-year kind of vintage book. At some point, you know, the jigs we have now are modern, right? So I had to cut it off somewhere. The title of the book, the original title, A History of Vintage Southern California Surface Iron. So we defined vintage as 1952 to 1982. But when I got all done with the book, I was kind of like, I got to pay some kind of tribute to the jigs that came prior to 1952. So I did a little mini history section on the 1930s and 40s, the spoons and the trolling lures and the bone jigs that kind of influenced this. So here's a little snippet of kind of the history section, the stuff that comes before, you know, the putters and things like that. And then, of course, me being a history teacher, I'm always going to include some World War II type propaganda in there and advertising from those early jigs as well, the hoodwinks and the Dodgers and all the spoons and all the trolling lures that end up leading to the aluminum jigs we use in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
That's my next question. So they were making, well, I didn't get into the industry until the mid 60s going fishing with my dad.
Yeah.
I'm not that old. I'm only 63, but I started in 62. That's when I was born, and going down to the pier in 65 and seeing all the lures and all the different things. As a little kid, you know, that's a big deal. But I always wondered, what were they making the lures out of back in the 50s? That there was it aluminum? They were able
to. So if you think about, and I touched on this, during World War II, you know, for jig makers, it was impossible to find any type of metal. You know, if you think about the story of the aviator, right? And he made the spruce goose out of wood, and that's because he couldn't get enough aluminum to make the thing, right? So, you know, if you were a jig maker, you weren't going to get aluminum. All that stuff was being scrapped. All that stuff was going to the war effort. But post World War II, and you have to think about Southern California specifically, all the aerospace guys move into, you know, Long Beach, Los Angeles, all that area. And suddenly those guys have all the metals and stuff. And most of those guys were tinkerers, right? The mechanics and engineers. And a lot of them would go home and make a new jig or work on their hot rod. And so to me, that story is specifically Southern California related, which is a really cool piece of our history post World War II and the fishing industry that really gets shaped coming out of World War II.
Yeah. The craziest thing back then, those days, gang, was trying to figure out what lure to use. Cause like you and I talked earlier, there was no internet. So basically, these guys that made these lures had to go out on our boats and go fishing with us. And when I say our boats, remember, I've been in this sport fishing industry since working since 74, but my dad's been in it since 47. And the manufacturers of these lures, gang, it's hard to imagine, but they used to come out on our boats with buckets of these lures. And everybody got them for free. They wanted the boat slinging these lures. And the first one, those of you that are coming from the era of mine, remember the first one's free? The first lure was free. So let's go back to that for a minute. Let's talk about.
So I just grabbed a jig off my wall here. I don't know if you can see that says putter on it. So one of the commercial fishers, Jim Putter, he was using bone jigs. But, you know, if you're catching thousands of barracuda in a day and you've got 6 rods out and you're just throwing them on the deck, those bone jigs would eventually kind of break down. They're made out of whalebone. Plus, in 1946, they passed a law like restricting killing of whales. So all of a sudden, finding whalebone became hard too. And so aluminum was kind of the next thing that commercial guys went to, but then that caught on. In the 1950s with fishermen. 1958 really is the explosion of surface iron guys. So even the companies that are around in 52 and 53, the Mac Lures and the Starmans and things like that, there isn't really a huge push for that stuff. Like it catches on the boats until 1958. That's when a company like Salas gets involved as well. And that's also when the rod technology and the reel technology also catches up to where a guy can chuck one of these things and actually fish it successfully.
Yeah, the only thing we had was an old jig master. I'm going to let you guys know, there was jig masters back in those days, and you either had a metal spool or a plastic spool, period. There was no anodized aluminum spools in those days. And the metal spool, gang, you don't understand. It was one of the most clunkiest things to try to cast. But then if you fished with the plastic spool, which was much easier to cast, if you hooked anything of decent size, the spool would get the expansion from the line pressing down on the spool would make the side plates blow off. And I was there to see it happen many, many times. So it was
And I think the first jig master, I think it's around 58 as well. So right in that time period, you know, those advancements allowed for this. And as you just said, there was no internet, right? So the first guy that brings a jig on board, well, that takes time for it to catch on with the public back then, because you've had to physically see a guy do it and then decide, I want to buy a rod that's long enough. I want to learn how to cast like that. And finding jigs wasn't all that easy in 52, 53. So yeah, the real explosion in surface iron fishing in the late 50s. And then as you get into the 60s, we really start to push on.
So what were the first couple of I know you started on it for a minute, then I jumped you all over the place.
Yeah.
What were the first couple of companies that you came across that started out in the beginning of the book?
Yeah, so to me, the Starman section in this book is one of the best sections, period. It's one of the biggest too, and that's because the historian I worked with, a lot of you guys will know Wayne Allen, Starman is his thing. And so two guys, that's how they combine the name Star and Manning, and they put their Starkey and Manning, put their name together to create Starman Lures. And so those guys kind of are in the early 52, 53. You also have Mac Lures, which is McGowan, who the grandson's currently trying to bring back that company today. So it is interesting, of the 120 companies that are in here, I think only 3 are left. You know, you got Tady, you got Salas, and of course, the grandson of the original Mac Lures is trying to bring that company back today. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing that there was that many companies involved in this making of lures. Now,
a lot of people, like, you know, they're like, well, how many did we have? 50, 60? And I'm like, I left out a ton of companies, and there's a ton of one-offs too. And it was like, do you include a one-off jig if you don't know if it was if a guy's just making them in his garage? And then there's a ton of jigs that are from that time period that are unmarked completely. So it could have been a guy making them. We have no clue. So there could be even more than 120.
And what a fun thing to get into, because you love to surface iron fish. I see the videos with you and Benny. I mean, when you guys are together, you guys are chucking the irons all day.
I love fishing with Benny,
and it's fun to watch. And I mean, I'm not a lure fisherman, but I am a surface lure fisherman. And when those calicos are up on the top, I know, oh yeah, Dave's gonna talk about calicos again. Yep, absolutely. My very most favorite fish to fish for in the whole world. You're always in a beautiful place. And I'll tell you, when you see that brown ball chasing your surface iron, there's nothing more exciting. And then all of a sudden, they'll split like the parting of the Red Sea, and then a big yellow will eat it right there.
and for us, it's our year-round fish. And it's a fish, if you're in the right place, you can fish surface iron in Southern California for the entire year. You know, we get to colder water, things slow down, they slow down, but you could still go to San Clemente Island right now and probably find fish that are willing to bite the surface iron.
Oh yeah, that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
So there was a lure back when I was a little kid. My dad had a bunch of Jerry lures.
Yeah.
Jerry, they were white. He told me they used to catch sea bass on them. Then I was like, well, what's this one that doesn't weigh anything, Dad? This thing feels like it's made out of cotton. And he said, that's surface iron.
The really cool thing about Jerry is that he was really artistic. So in the back of the Southwest Sport Fishing magazines, he would draw these like hook, like tip of the day, that kind of stuff. So I found a ton of his drawings. But if you want to see the first page of the Jerry jig section, so So there's actually 2 pages from that section. Hopefully I'm on the camera so you can see a picture of Jerry there. When I found advertising, I always included it. And you can see there's 3 different backgrounds from the Jerry jig, like as far as like his stamp that he put on jigs. And he
Yeah, that
also made
bottom
it.
one, hold the book up a little higher. That bottom one right there, that's what I got from my dad. That thing was that little artistry he did.
Yes. And I probably have a background of that. There you go. So he also designed a lot of backgrounds for other jig companies. So you can see that background right there. He drew those backgrounds on the back of those lures.
Wow.
And we actually, and I owe Jerry a huge thank you. He's not around anymore, unfortunately, but one of the few articles that we have on the history of jigs is from him. He wrote, they're all over the internet. So if you type in Jerry Eston and history of jigs, you'll find him on Bloody Decks, and there's a few other forums that he posted the article. But for a long time, forever until this book, that's been our only resource, is reading his articles about the jigs that he remembers. And so that's kind of where I started this whole thing. I basically took those articles and exploded them into this giant coffee table book.
No, I just can't believe that every time I ask you about a lure or a lure company, you have something in the pages there. Gang, we're going to do something kind of different. Scott thought this would be a good idea. If you guys want to do something fun, over on YouTube, you can give a donation, $5. Anybody that gives a $5 donation, you can pick a page and we'll just grab a page out of the book. We can't, if 100 of you give me $5 donation, thank you very much, but we'll do 100 of them. But we'll do the first couple. If you want to do that over on YouTube, go ahead and give a $5 donation. Scott will open it up to that page and we'll talk about what it's all about. We cannot possibly get through the whole book today. Like I told you, we got an hour-long show, but we're going to do the best we can. So is there anything in the book about how they used to promote these lures? Because I remember if the guy could fish, and like a guy we're going to talk about later, he knew how to fish. And if the lure manufacturer knew how to fish, it was a magical event on the boat, because the people, you guys on a sport boat, we used to carry, if the boat carried 100 people, we carry 100 people every day. You don't understand. Fishing was like the big thing back in the day. And people would all gather around the lure chucker and watch what he was doing and watch what he was catching. And then he would go to the bucket and he would here, $1, 50 cents. It was almost free. If you look at money today compared to back then, it's the same price, but 25 cents, 50 cents, $1. You could get a lure from the guy that you just watched him catch 10 barracuda on it. And then the guys that couldn't fish, where we're trying to peddle their lures, they didn't do too good.
And that's how they got these things word of mouth. You know, Tady was famous for giving them to captains and deckhands, and Leonard Lucier was the same. They would get on boats and they would start fishing, and they would make sure that if they caught a fish on that jig, that the entire boat would know about it, because it would be announced very loudly that they got it on a straggler or a Tady or you name it.
And we're going to talk about that straggler Leonard here in a few minutes, gang. Before we do that, though, I just want to make sure that you guys check out this new coffin kill bag from Deckhand Sports. We're going to show you a little video here. Rylan was out hunting with his dad, got a nice elk, because we're about to go down a rabbit hole that we're going to be going through this for a long time. Leonard was one of my heroes growing up as a kid, and I know a lot of my friends that are watching right now knew Leonard and knew the straggler jig. So if we could show that video real quick, Elliot, of Rylan, then we'll get going here with the rest of this. Do we have a second?
And we're using a Deckhand coffin kill bag, and I'm gonna tag it right now.
This is the new Deckhand Sports coffin kill bag, the 225L. And as you can see, Rylan just got his first elk. He's super excited. We quartered this entire 550-pound elk, and it fits perfectly right inside of here. These kill bags aren't just for fish, they're for all game, whether it's fish or big game animals such as deer or elk. Hope you enjoy.
Yeah, that bag is incredible, the way that it comes apart. And It rolls right out, and then you blow it up, and it's a perfect square box when you're all done at the end of the day. We'll throw the QR code up there on the screen, gang. You guys can go over to the Deckhand Sports website, check out all the things that they have to offer you. We have the little backpacks that we use to carry our lobsters off the boat in. We have, if you go with Justin or you watch the live fishing shows at night, you'll see the kill bag on the back of the boat with a big thresher shark in it, a bunch of halibut. And then we put all your lobsters in your Deckhand Sports backpacks, and you walk off the boat with them. But there's the new coffin. There's the new coffin, fully insulated kill bag. It's amazing. It blows up. You see right there in the bottom left-hand corner, it's got that little valve opening there. It comes with the pump. It comes with the bag. It comes with everything ready to go. You just blow that thing up, shove it on your deck, and you're ready to go. And as you just saw, it's holding a giant elk in it. So it can hold your swordfish. It can hold your calico bass. It can hold your yellowtail. Look at that bag. Holds that big old giant elk. One bag, one elk. Pretty spectacular, gang. And our good friend Cliff Gray's been on the show many times. He uses them when he's out hunting. He's got a series of videos with the Deckhand kill bags on it. But go check that all out over at deckhandsports.com. And then you put in the code YSWG. You're going to save YSWG15. You're going to save 15% on the kill bag. So check it all out. Go over there. Dave's on the show right now on the sidelines there. If you have any questions, you can just throw them up on the side there. And Dave will answer your questions about the Deckhand kill bag. That's the best part about our podcast. We're interactive. It's live. We're here the whole time, just like a lot of you are asking Scott questions over here on the side. And we'll try to answer as many questions as we can as the show goes on. But if you have any questions about the kill bags, just let Dave know. He's right here on the sidelines. Scott, what is the rarest surface iron lure that you found out there so far? That's a question from our buddy Brian. Oh, I can't hear him. Can you hear him, Elliot?
The host unmuted question.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
Oh, I'm back. All right, good. Yeah, I saw that question there. So it's actually a really difficult question to answer because there are a lot of one-off jigs that are just so, like there's only one or two of them, period. So I'll just grab one off of so this jig right here is called the Slim Jim. To my knowledge, there are 3 of them in existence total. 2 big collectors have the other 2. Here's the 3rd one right here. But the problem with that, so it's super rare. I have a Golden West over here. There's only maybe one of one, or 2 or 3 or whatever. So, but is that really a collectible jig if there's only 1 or 2? Because maybe it wasn't a company. Maybe it was a guy that made a handful for his buddies. So then the question becomes, out of the big jig companies, what is the rarest jig out there and things like that? So Danico is a really popular big company that made lures. Let's see if I can find, this one right here. And so this is the Ajax. This is a super rare one right here. And this is the other Ajax. So there's 2 different sizes on Ajax, and those are by Danico. Another really rare one that everybody loves that is very collectible. There are 2 deckhands. So this is there's the deckhand for you right there. And the rare of the 2 is actually this guy right here. And that is the Deckhand 1. So again, it's a hard question to ask because there's some really rare one-offs that are really cool. I was just showing these guys a super rare jig. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. This jig is called a floozy. And if you look at the nose, very different than probably anything you've ever seen before, how your ring attached to that. And so there's the floozy on the back. But again, is it a collectible jig if there's only a couple that are out there? In the back of the book, I actually did a section for that kind of question. I don't want to give away too much of the book because I want you guys to be excited when you see it and turn the page. But in the very back of the book, I did the top 10 most collectible jig companies out there. So that's for you at the very end.
Now, we had a couple of questions. The anodized aluminum jigs that you're showing, just there's no color on them, gang. What you need to understand, I'm just going to blow everybody's mind right now.
There's some color for you.
Yeah, but color doesn't really matter. It's the way the jig swims. That anodized aluminum, baby, if that thing's swimming proper, it's going to get bit every single time. And what does anodized aluminum look like? No fish I've ever seen before, but if it swims good, it's going to get bit. Most of those lures, the color is for us. Color's for the fishermen. Really, I know. You're going to disagree with me, but
No. I'm gonna, if you gave me a choice between a jig that swims and a jig that was pretty, I'm taking the jig that swims every single time. And I think that most of your surface iron guys are always going to take a swimmer over some color. The only time I might kind of think color, if there's red crab in the water, like sometimes it really is hard to get bit on anything other than some type of red on your, if you're going to throw surface at it while there's red crab in the water, that I'm going to want some type of red on there. But I do have jigs that are painted. This is a really famous jig right here. This is a bartender. And this is probably one of the most collectible jigs out there, and they made it in 3 sizes. So I like that old school style where the top half is painted this. That's actually the jig that's on the cover of the book as well.
And John Stanley asked a question. If you were only able to fish one surface iron for the rest of your life, which surface iron would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very biased, but and I actually did that page in the book too.
Okay.
So
don't tell anybody. Make them buy the book.
Here's the question I ask: the best surface iron of all time, and I put those 3 up there. So for me, I'm biased. It's a Tady 45 every single day of the week. So, and I have some Tady 45s that even if you offered me a few $100s for them, because they're, from the 90s or from the 2000s, I'm not selling it to you. It's my go-to swimming jig for calicos or my go-to swimming jig for yellowtail. And it's not for sale at any price.
Yeah, I had a question come through from Matt. He wanted to know, what's your color go-to? We talked about this with Scott last year on the show. The wounded soldier, the avocado green with the red tail. It's like, if there's one on the boat, I'll find it in your tackle box. That's the one I'm throwing. That is my go-to. But anodized aluminum, if you look at that video I made on Al's boat throwing that surface iron, that anodized aluminum lure he has, that thing is money the way it swims. The thing is just incredible. But
there's the Tady book for you. Speaking of the Tady book, I was able to interview the guy who invented the wounded soldier. So if you haven't checked out the Tady book yet, that whole interview's in there, and along with a lot of history on Tady Lures and other companies in there too.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal book. I couldn't believe how wonderful you put that together when we were able to check it out at the PCS show, because we talked about it. Then I got to sit down and go through it. And there you go, gang. There's some of the old sport boats. You don't understand. Like Scott and I were talking, gang, those of you that are listening, if you can't even comprehend how exciting it was when one of these lure manufacturers picked your boat to go on. And when I say your boat, I mean your sport boat. They would come down and you would know, and it would be like there was a movie star on the top of the pier, top of the ramp, and everyone on the boat was super excited that this guy was going with you on the boat, because you knew that there was going to be a bucket of brand new lures, and it was just going to be some of the most coolest stuff you could see. And it was always, gang, what you don't understand is it was Barracuda, 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 Barracuda. Everything else didn't matter. It was about the Barracuda. The Barracuda was the #1 fish for us in the sport fishing industry in the 60s and 70s. It lost its lure in the 80s. Everybody just decided that Barracuda weren't any good. But before that, boy, they were the money-making #1 fish. And if that lure didn't catch a Barracuda when he handed them out to us, And like Scott said, he gave them to they weren't good with the stick, if they weren't good with the fishing rod, they gave them to the captain or they gave them to the deckhand. And it was, as a deckhand, it was the only time we were allowed to fish as a deckhand was when one of the manufacturers were on the boat, because you had to hook a fish. Because listen, we would sell the lures on the boat when they would leave. They would leave us, we'd buy 100 of them or whatever. If it caught a fish, we'd buy 100 of them, then we'd sell them out of the galley on the next trip. It was big deal back in those days, gang. And our guy for San Clemente sport fishing was Leonard Straggler. When I hear his name, my heart kind of skips a beat. I get butterflies in my stomach. Leonard's had the most coolest looking lures. As you were a kid, it was the only lure that had like a fish tail on the butt, on the end of it, and the colors were magical, gang. The colors were just absolutely incredible. And when Leonard would come on the boat, everybody knew, because he was very, very loud. He was very loud, and you knew Leonard was there. When you would pull the boat into the pier, Leonard would be on the top of the pier yelling down at the crew and telling them to get the cheeseburgers ready and all that stuff. It was like going to Disneyland as a deckhand.
Hey, I will tell you, if Leonard Lucier, if Straggler, if every single company advertised as much as he did, I could have wrote this book in 2 months. Every single newspaper I looked at, starting, the very first Straggler ad I found was in 1959 in Western Outdoor News. And thank you, Western Outdoor News, for letting me look through all of your archives and everything like that to write this book. Couldn't have done it without all the magazine companies. But he advertised in every single Western Outdoor News. He made a tackle box that a lot of people don't know about, and then all of his jigs as well. Since you brought up colors, I did a bunch of centerfolds for the book. And so there's the Straggler centerfold with all the different colors you can see there. So, yeah, and you can see those fishtails that Dave was just talking about on some of those jigs. And if you want to see a picture of Leonard Lucier, there's a picture of Leonard for you right there. So
there he is.
Along with advertising, his business card. And so if you find an early Straggler, see that small print Straggler? Those are his first ones. You can see that bigger print Straggler on the bottom there. Those are the ones that come out later. But yeah, that guy, it was so easy to write and fun to write the Straggler section, because I didn't use all the ads I found. Whereas most companies, if I found one ad, it was going in the book.
Yeah, it was such a magical event when Leonard would come on the boat, or any jig manufacturer that is. Even there was a lot of guys there. Oh my gosh. I can't wait to get my hands on
and look at, this is just a sampling, just because I felt like I wanted to include all the cool ones. But again, I left half of them on my computer.
Gang, this shows, I know you guys are getting something out of it. This show is way big time for me. Devin Cruz, Dave Burris. Remember, this was my dad's thing, was selling Straggler lures on the San Clemente Pier and all the boats. And I remember days and days, my dad and Leonard fighting, because Leonard would sell the jigs on the boat for 50 cents less than my father was selling them for. Gang, you don't understand. This goes way back. When I sit down with this book and read all about Leonard, it's going to bring so many phenomenal memories of me and my dad working on the boats together, and the whole thing, gang. And like Devin Cruz, you were there. Dave Burris, you were there. Those of you that remember Leonard, this is a magical time in my life. Just magical.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that, because to me, I didn't write these books as the all-knowing, powerful Wizard of Oz. None of these stories are mine. They're all yours. I was just the collector, the gatherer that put them all in a book. So to me, these are community books. And nothing in here to me is definitive, because your story might be different than the one that I have. And that there's value to that. And I look forward to hearing all of those stories, like those ones right there, because I wasn't alive for most of it. And, to me, I just is the guy that compiled all of this stuff, interviewed all the old guys, read all the books. I read every single Western Outdoor News going back to the 1950s, every single South Coast sport fishing in the early 80s to try to come up with this. But again, I put more questions in the book than I put answers. I don't know who made the Sputnik. I put it in the Danico section, but hey, I don't know who made the bartender. Hopefully one of your, and to me, if the community can come together around these books and solve some of these issues and do some of this history together, that's the book is supposed to be the start of the conversation, not the end of the conversation. Like, this is it.
No, exactly. It's going to be for each, like I was just saying, that Leonard's, that Straggler section, that's for us at the San Clemente Pier. That's for us at Dana Orr Sport Fishing, because Leonard was one of our guys. I mean, I know he went up and down the coast and did it, but he really touched all of the deckhands and all the captains at Dana Orr Sport Fishing and San Clemente Sport Fishing back in the 60s and early 70s. He was a bigger than life character. Those of you that are like baseball fans, it'd be Babe Ruth. Those of you that are hockey fans, it's your Wayne Gretzky. Leonard was our guy in the fishing industry. And really, I didn't even know there was any other lure companies making lures for a while there, because we were all engulfed with Stragglers, and I saved my allowance every week to buy another Straggler lure, or I would do my best to try to get one off the rack when my dad wasn't looking, whatever it was.
I love that piece of the history too, because the jig companies were all very compartmentalized back then. San Diego was a 3-in-1, but north of San Diego, you didn't necessarily hear about that jig. Mac Lures was out of Mac Outlet in Long Beach. And if you didn't live within Long Beach, you probably didn't know about Mac Lures. Even though it was one of the originals, it was just sold in that outlet, right? So everybody had their little niche and their little neighborhood tackle store. And if that neighborhood tackle store carried jerry jigs, that's what you fished with. If it was your Mac Outlet, that's what you fished with. Because not all the tackle stores had all the different lures.
Devin Cruz just said it perfect. Devin's a couple of years older than me, but he remembers when Leonard took all the lures out of Dana Orr Sport Fishing one day because he was pissed. He had started selling Salas lures because he had a relationship with Marty Salas, and Leonard was pissed. And that's kind of how the whole industry, like Scott said, that's how the whole industry was, gang. They had their spot. That was their spot to sell their goods, and it was very competitive. And if someone else got into theirs, Leonard and my dad fought all the time over 50 cents. It was most first seen.
John S., I just read your comment there, who said he has a ton of jigs at home. Is this book going to help identify him? Absolutely. This book is written for a lot of different people. One, it's written for the guy who is the collector, who owns it all, who doesn't know some of these stories or doesn't know the advertising. But it's also written for a guy like you that has a bunch at home and now can easily thumb through this book alphabetically, and you have an S&G jig at home and you turn to the S&G section and say, oh, now I know a little bit about this jig. So absolutely, the hope is that this book helps identify some of these lures and helps some people maybe get into the collecting game that have never thought about it, but suddenly realize they've got some cool jigs at home, and this gets them started on that. But yes, this book will definitely help you identify and have some stories behind some of these cool jigs.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be so fun to go down memory lane. And then John Stanley and you kind of talked a little bit last year on the show. His father-in-law was big into the lure companies. I don't know if you remember him talking to you about it last year, but
this last couple of years has been a blur. All day, teaching all day, writing all night, promoting the next book, writing the next one. It's been a quick year.
Oh yeah, I understand. When is the book going to be available to purchase?
Yeah, so I actually got the first 5 last night, and so I'm actually in the middle of reading it. I found 2 errors, which I'm not very happy about, but it's going to have to go at this point. And so as soon as I get off this call, I need to finish kind of reading the book for the first time. I will then call the printer and say go. Usually it's about a month from there that they have to print, and then it gets on the water, and then we'll make it here. As most of you guys know, I was a week late to the PCS show last year. So I'm a month ahead of schedule of where I was last time. So the idea is that, fingers crossed, I will have it at PCS this year. The price point out of the show, it's going to sell for in the 90s, but there will be a show special. Right now we're looking at $79.99 for the book, and what you're getting and what I have into it. And even somebody I told last night who looked at it and was like, this is a value, like for how big this book is and what went into it. Because to me, I want to sell them, and I want to move on to book 3 that I've already started moving my brain to.
Yeah, but you can't put a price on memories. The memories that are going to be coming flying through are just going to be absolutely incredible. It's going to make you guys, anybody that's been in the industry for a minute, it's going to make you go right back to the beginning. Just the Leonard Straggler thing has just got me just so fired up and so excited. First, I'm going to answer your question, Matt. Then why I'm answering. Dan Fink was the guy that John Stanley's related.
Oh, that's John. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was such a cool moment last year. Because he's the reason I started all of this, which is so crazy to think about. When Joey from Tady Lures called me and said, hey, the guy that I've been telling you that you need to interview, because I as a history person, I just had lots of questions for Joey. And Joey is a young guy, and he wasn't around. He never got to meet his grandfather. And his dad died early on. So does his uncle. And so he's like, all these questions you have, Dan Fink's your guy. And even today, I run into people in parking lots that always go, oh, you should have met this guy named Dan Fink. And I still run into his name all the time. So his name is constantly out there in the collecting community.
Yeah, and I've been in John's garage. He does have a lot of lures. You and him would have to call one day when you're in the San Diego area. You should call Stanley up and say, hey, I want to drop by. You'll be blown away. I don't know if you've been to Michael Folks's garage museum either. That's a pretty magical place.
I got to talk with him at a CCA event recently. I showed him the Tady book and got to thank him for being the storyteller of my childhood, and here I am telling stories now about jigs. And so he got to look at the book and was really positive about it and told me, hey, you got to come up to my man cave and check out what I got up there. So yeah, I will be taking him up on that invitation very soon.
Well, it'd be cool for you to go in there and sit down with him and let him do an interview with you too, because it would be magical. We'll break it all up and play it all over our social media, but you need to go sit down in those chairs like I did. And being mesmerized with the museum he has, and it is a museum for you and me.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff from the old tuna club, a lot of stuff from the museum at Avalon. Michael got to grab all that stuff. It's pretty spectacular in his little room.
Well, and 2 thoughts there. One, if you guys haven't seen his series on the history of sport fishing, make sure you check it out. It's awesome. And part of this too is supporting these history projects so that they keep happening more. If Michael Folks ends up with a thing where nobody supports it, well, you're never going to get another one, right? This is going to be the end of it. And not to promote my own book, but if nobody buys this thing, I'm not going to be able to afford to put out the 3rd one. This is supposed to be a 3-volume set, but these types of things need the support of you guys if we're going to keep going. And the other thing you said there is a museum, or his room is a museum. We need a sport fishing museum in Southern California. And for a guy like me to try and tell this history without having a library to go to try to have to contact the guys from Western Outdoor News, to try to have to find every copy of this magazine almanac and go to all the old guys. It would be really cool if we had a museum one day with a library in it that a guy like me could go to and do all of his research in one spot. And we'd start getting a lot more of these projects if we had a place like that. So just a thought down the line one day. I know it's going to happen one day, but it'd be cool.
Oh, yeah. I don't understand why Michael's show has not caught on. Like, I couldn't even believe it when I watched it. Kelly Girl and I, we binge watched the whole thing. It's an incredible docu-series about our passion, what we do. And it covers every aspect of it, and the whole lure thing and how they used to make them out of whale bones, like you said, and all the different things that have to do with the history of sport fishing. I don't know why you guys all haven't jumped on and grabbed this. It's pretty strange.
Yeah, the only thing I can think from some of my old guys, they have a hard time with streaming services and computers, and every single one goes, "Hey, can you just get me a DVD of the thing?" So once we get some of these older dudes onto the computers and such, I think this thing will kind of catch on that way, because once you watch one episode, you're like, "Oh my God, what was I waiting for? Like, this is cool."
Oh yeah, it's spectacular. Matt asked me about the color of the hook on the lure. Yesterday's show was all about the color of your hook when you're fishing live bait.
Okay.
It'll be black or bronze. When you're fishing with the lure, it's a reactionary bite. It's not like a bait where the fish comes up and sees the bait, gets a couple seconds to look at it. When you're fishing a lure, that thing is such a reactionary bite, Mike, that it doesn't matter what color the hook is. Yeah. Would I like them all to be bronze or black? Absolutely, but they don't come out that way. They come out galvanized. The hooks are galvanized. That's just the way that all hook manufacturers make it. Because if they were going to use those bronze or black hooks, then the lure is going to jump up in price again. Where they have, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, Scott. Is that the reason, or why do they not use black or bronze?
Yeah, it's a good question. You'd have to ask one of the manufacturers. Why the hook color is what it is. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that, but it does sound like we have to do another one of these where we just talk about how to fish the iron.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many different, I mean, I have those videos over on our website and stuff, but hey, Devin Cruz has a question. You see it there?
Yeah, no, that's Devin, and thank you. That is super awesome. He says he has a Straggler feather jig still in the original package. That is awesome. Thank you. That is really cool. Yeah, I look forward to meeting you and seeing that in person at PCS. Yeah, for guys, I'll be at the PCS show. I'm right next to the Tady booth. So if you're looking for me and can't find me, I'll be right next to the Tady booth again. Same spot as last year.
And then you see Curtis's question about the Newell Baja jigs.
Yep, I got Newell in here.
Don't give up too much of the book.
I know, you want to give the fans what they like, but yeah, to me, and I even have like a ad from Newell in there as well. I can show you a quick and one in the packaging for you as well. So there's your advertising, there's your Newell page. So that's just like a little taste of what each jig company gets. And again, I did that over 100 times, but the important companies like House of Jigs and Straggler and Schnabel and all of those, they get, 10, 15, 20, Salis, get a lot of pages. Whereas some of the smaller ones just get like a page or two.
And Dave Burris summed it up perfect. And I should have known. You can't use bronze or black on the lure, gang, because they dissolve right away. They just start to break down. That's part of the deal. All right. See you later, buddy. Elliot's going to take off. So it's just me and you now, Scott, running the show. Bye, Elliot. Have a great day.
Oh, how scary. How scary.
Yeah, it's very terrifying. But Dave Burris summed it up perfect. Those hooks will rust right out. Where these galvanized hooks, they rust, but it takes a while. Like Scott and I will tell you, the more fish you catch, the more chance of it rusting because it's getting eaten. We love to see, Scott and I, we love to see a lure that has a bunch of teeth marks on it because we know they like that one. there is.
Yeah. Paint's gone and it's still catching
the
fish.
way it swims, gang. And one thing Scott and I didn't talk about, you don't know what that lure is going to do when it hits the water until you go out there. Every single lure, all it takes is for that hole in the front where the ring is to be just off at 18,000th of an inch. It'll change the way it swims. Right, Scott?
There's so many things that go into it, and guys that are super geeky about it will even tell you there's a weld on the front ring and you tie your knot 45 degrees to that weld. There's some guys that tie it on the weld. A lot of jigs used to come with a paint nipple. When the paint would dry, it would have a nipple on the top. And I know guys that will not fish without a paint nipple on the front. So there is a lot that goes into it. And so somebody I saw earlier said, hey, what about the reel speed retrieve? every jig wants to swim at a different speed. And you might be right next to your friend with a same reel, and he's got 40-pound mono on, and you have 40-pound mono, and you're getting bit at a faster retrieve than he is. Who knows? But your first couple casts, you always want to look down when the boat's coming and see, is it swimming? A lot of guys too, when they first cast, they're all juiced up. And you have to remember that a lot of these lures were developed in the 50s and 60s when reels were only 3-to-1. And here you are with a 7-to-1 reeling it, and you're going way too fast for what that jig wants to swim at. So this weekend, Joey and I from Tady Lures were thinking about introducing some new lures, and we were testing. And I threw them on reels with Spectra. We threw them on reels with mono. We threw them on level wind jigs. We threw them on open face jigs, because we want to see what that jig is going to do in your hands, because every single one of you is fishing with a different reel now, with a different speed, 5-to-1, 7-to-1, 40-pound mono. No, I'm a straight Spectra guy. So you have to test these jigs under all of those conditions. All the jigs, most of them want to swim, but you have to find that right formula of what speed this thing wants to swim at. Some do better in current. Some do better with no current. So all of these things that go into picking the right jig at that moment.
Yeah, and you could have a 45 and another 45 side by side, and you just look at them and you can just see one's just a little tiny bit different. And
well, Tadasso actually made 3 different versions of the 45 in the original board. There's a pointy nose one, and by the way, if you ever come into like fishermen, they'll tell you I'm a pointy nose guy, I'm a flat nose guy. But on that board, there was pointy nose, there was the rounded nose, and then there was also the flat nose. And he wanted all 3 of those because they all 3 fished very differently in different conditions. But also, all of them have an important role in different conditions.
right, and like Scott said, you don't understand until you understand. You got to throw that lure in the water, and you got to crank it and see how, what we call it is the way the jig kicks. It's going to swim back and forth, left and right. And sometimes if you wind too fast, it'll spin. And if you don't wind fast enough, it'll do like planing in the water where the bow of the lure is up and it's not swimming. It's a definite, there's so much involved, like Scott, we can spend the whole day how.
I was gonna say it's a totally different episode to get into how to, from rods to reels to mono versus Spectra, to how you pick a lure out of the, you go to Longfin or Save On and there's 1,000 jigs on the wall. Like, how am I picking this? So there is a lot to do with that. And yeah, so somebody asked a question there, like, what's the best knot? A lot of guys use a double San Diego. But again, it's all preference. But yeah, we might have to do another show where we just do the how-to.
You, me, and Benny. That would be so fun. That would be a lot of fun. I know Benny's into it. Gang, as we're talking here, it just brings back the memories when we were working on the sport boats in the 70s, and the lure companies or the rod and reel companies would bring all this stuff out on the boat. You could test it right there. Now, the only way you get to see, you got to buy it in the tackle store, and then you got to take it out there and try it. And don't get discouraged if your lure's spinning or if it's not swimming. It's not the lure. It's probably the way you're presenting the lure. So there's, like Scott said, there's so many different things involved in the lures. Just remember that. But those of you that have a bunch of lures in your garage, this is going to be so fun to go through the book and start to identify your lures, like John Stanley was saying. For me, the memories are going to come flooding in. And as all my viewers know, I'm a very emotional guy. So this book, there's probably going to be teardrops on the book because it's super emotional. When you talked about jerry jigs, that was my first contest in the 60s, was the jerry jigs, the white ones my dad had that he said were white sea bass killers. And he said,
nice.
If you're going to fish white, and this was back when there weren't any real white sea bass, we pretty much devastated. But if you were going to fish white sea bass, you had to have a white jerry jig with 3 squid hanging on it. One on each of the 3 treble hooks. And then for you to go, yeah, jerry jig, and you open the book and it's right there. That's what's going to get you all, gang. You guys all have lures you thought of when you were kids. I didn't save anything. I'm not a hoarder. I don't have any of the good old stuff. So to come to the show and see with the two guys that have that booth that they sell all the used tackle out of, they have that wall.
Yeah. San Diego
They have
Tackle
that
Traders.
wall of lures. Oh my! I love those guys. They know me, and I just go in there and just, wow, you have one of these. Wow, you have one of those. It's pretty fun. And to stand there with your book and look, that would be even more magical.
No, it's cool that people thought at some point smarter than me that, hey, I want to collect this stuff. You know, it brings back my childhood and I want to save this stuff, because a lot of this stuff would have just been gone had it not been for a lot of the guys that decided, let's save this. This is going to be worth something one day. It's going to be worth holding on to these things. So otherwise, books like this wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, exactly. Gang, you guys can see Scott at the Pacific Coast Sport Fishing Show. Like he said, some of you just jumped on here. You don't understand what we're talking about. Let's show that book again. Let's let everybody see what we're talking about here.
So 295 pages. I did over 100 companies, like profiled 100 different surface iron companies. The book goes from 1952 to 1982. The original title of the book was From Apache to Zorro, because it's from A to Z. So the book, you know, a lot of guys wanted me to do it chronologically, but that's simply impossible because there's way too many companies that we have no idea when they were done, all that kind of stuff. So I start with numbers, and then the very last jig is a Zorro jig, which is also a rare one that most guys don't know about. So some features of the book, if you want to check that out real quick. For those of you that bought the Tady book, I did the same type of thing. I opened up with a shot of, you know, just no paint on some really old jigs, and then ended with color of some really old jigs. You can see a Black Robin there, a Danico, and some Langleys, and there's the Matador in there and stuff like that. If I take the cover off for you guys, same thing as last time. Gold leafing on the inside. It's got a terry cloth cover, so no expense was spared to try and provide the best book for you guys in your man caves, in your fishing room, out in your living room, wherever you're going to put these things. So yeah, any other questions about yeah, so I'll be next to the Tady booth again at PCS. And the thing, I'm a month ahead of where I was last time, so the hope is I will have this book for you and you get to walk away from it, whereas last time you had to give money to a guy you'd never met before and hope that he mailed it to you. So thank you for everybody that did that, by the way. This book right here would not exist for without those of you that supported the Tady
And one
project.
thing I want you all to understand is before Scott and I went on this show, he told me he made enough to pay for the last book, the printing, the whole thing. That's what he made on the last book. So he's not trying to, this is not supplementing his income. He's a history teacher. That's what he does. But he loves fishing like we all do. And he's trying to give back to the industry. And this is going to give back to me. And so many of you that are watching, the memories are just pouring through us right now. Those of us that have been in the industry for a long time, and those of you that are new to the industry, but your parents or your grandparents or somebody was in, you might look around somewhere in your garage and find one of these old vintage lures, and then you'll read all about it in the book. And yeah, it's going to be magical.
Yeah.
Absolutely magical.
I know we talked about playing a game with one of your viewers. I don't know if we can do that, but we kind of talked about letting one viewer pick a page. I told him at the beginning, guys, I want you to have the surprise of opening the book. So that's why I don't want to show too much of it, because I want you to have that moment where you turn the page and you're like, oh my God, House of Jigs. Oh, I didn't know that ad existed. So I don't want to show too much of the book, because I want you guys to, it's kind of like when you go to see a movie and somebody's already told you what the movie is, and then you watch it and you're not that excited because you already kind of knew. So if somebody, I don't know how you want to do it, if somebody wants to throw out a random number, if you want to do it with one of your famous followers, or if you want to
Devin, give us a
one or
page number right now, Devo. Come on. And this is how you can watch Michael's movie right there, gang. If you want to see the 12-part docuseries we were talking about, a lot of you were asking, go to the QR code right there and go watch this thing, streaming it on your TV. It's pretty spectacular. You're going to be blown away by all the information. In the very beginning of the movie starts out, it's probably the best start of any movie ever made in the history of the planet Earth. Yes,
I know why
indeed.
you're
And you'll
saying
all
that.
know when you watch it, you'll go, holy hell, how did he get on there?
How did I know that? How did I know that somebody was going to put 69 as their first answer? I almost said, I guarantee you. Just to answer Curtis's question real quick, there is a market for these old jigs. There are tackle meets and garage, like things like that, where all these old guys go and sell old lures and trade old lures. There's a whole community. In fact, to me, the book that I'm selling right here, there's about 100 guys that would pay whatever I asked for it. Like if I would have said this is a $500 book, there's about 100 people that would pay that. The big time collectors would pay whatever. But I'm pricing it for you guys because there's not enough of those guys to buy all 1,000 of these things. So let's see. The first one I saw was 47. So by the way, the book does go up to 295, but let's get to 47 and see if there's something cool for you guys.
Yeah, this is pretty spectacular. It's like going to be like opening a Christmas gift.
Ooh. So whoever picked 47, let's see, that's Fish Matt Ryan. You picked, to me, one of the coolest, most collectible jigs out there. So Black Robin is one of the cool collectible. And so the page that you picked, so there are two 40s. A Black Robin 40 is this guy over here, but they also made this weirdly, oddly shaped, it almost looks like a halibut. I'll pull one off the wall here in a second. But there is your Black Robin, what I call a 40 wide, but it's just called a 40 on the back. Let me pull one out for you. So this is what a Black Robin 40 looks like. You can see this really cool cut that would have pushed water on both sides here. Super flat, super thin jig, but I've never seen a jig this wide before on something that's only, 6-7 inches long. There's your back stamp right there. And I don't know if I can get it close enough for you to see the 40 that's there, but Black Robin, super collectible company. And that right there is a holy grail for a lot of guys, finding a Black Robin 40 wide. So there was 47. Should we do 69? I'm afraid.
And Charles was asking a question about, do I think a surface iron is more effective than a crocodile surface spoon? Absolutely. I do. I personally do, just because of the way it swims. Now the crocodile, I fish it on the beaches down here in Cabo and stuff, and
I was just about to say, if I was on some rock stand in Cabo San Lucas, I'd probably throw a crocodile before I'd grab a surface iron. However, there's moments for both. So depending on what you're doing.
It's hard to throw a crocodile when the
69.
calico bass are boiling all around the boat when you can throw a surface iron. Go ahead.
All right, 69 is a very rare jig, and we don't know a lot about this guy. They are called the Moore jig, and you can see one of them. It's Dr. Moore, and so that's the only thing I have on him. I can pull some off the rack right here so you can actually get a good look. One of them is a big one. So the Dr. Moore is a pretty big jig. You can see there is Dr. Moore for you right there. And so he made it in a couple different sizes. Let me see if I have some others on the wall. That's a Black Robin. And there's your other Moore for you right there. So you can see the difference in sizes there. That's your big guy right there. And again, we don't know much about this person. Is that upside down? We don't know much about this guy. Was he just a garage tinker? Was he actually a doctor and just at home making lures? We don't know.
Mark's got it. You have those in your book?
What? So Dynatrol. So I have rod benders in here. RB. Dynatrol. So this gets to the as a trolling lure, a surface iron, and so that became. I had to have some kind of parameters around the book as far as not to include everything. And a Dynatrol is definitely not something you're going to cast and retrieve. It's something you're going to troll, right? So even though I put rod bender in here, I don't think I included the Dynatrol just because not really a surface iron. But I'm with you. These are tons of questions that I had as I was kind of going forward. Yeah, no Dynatrolls there.
Well, you trolled those things and they stayed in the water when you trolled them, or I didn't ever even heard of
The Dynatrolls, so there's actually guys that are still using them. SurfaceIron.com is currently drilling a hole through them and like putting a pin so that they do stay in the water better. So if you're interested, check out SurfaceIron.com, as they're kind of like trying to repurpose some Dynatrolls from back in the day.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I gotcha. Dave Burris said they were more for catching wahoo. Gotcha. Yeah, we used to, when the barracuda were biting, we used to put piano wire for like 6-8 inches of piano wire on the jig, made it swim surface iron, because those barracuda would inhale it and snap you off. We only had monofilament back in the day. There was no braided line. We didn't have any. And
I know guys that will not fish some surface iron without putting wire on it. And the thought process is that wire that gives you another point of movement, right? So I know a lot of guys that won't fish Starman jigs without wire, and it's not about barracuda, it's not about wahoo, it's about it makes the jig swim better. So there is a whole bunch of guys out there that belong to that theory. Somebody asked about a big schnabel. I'm going to show you something most of you guys have never seen in your whole lives before. The biggest schnabel ever to exist. Obviously, this isn't one they fished with. This is was a kind of like a sample that they'd have like for promotion inside the warehouse. But this is also in the book. Really cool. Bob Tuttle found this one in all places, New Jersey. How did this end up in New Jersey? One story about the chevron, though, and this is the one of like the little tiny things that are in the book. So that is designed to look like a gill of a fish. So all the schnabel jigs that have those chevrons on them, trying to think if I have one back here. Actually, I have a company that's not schnabel. There was lots of companies that actually made put chevrons on their jigs. So this is a non-schnabel brand that you can see there's a chevron there. And so that chevron was supposed to look like a gill of a sardine or an anchovy. This is kind of cool. It says schnabel on the back, 18 inches long.
Oh, yeah. Yep. We had the big giant straggler jig hanging on the wall in the office at Dana Wharf, and it was all.
There you go. Yeah. So he also made them. Jerry Jigs also made them. They were all advertising jigs like to hang in shops. Salas also made the big 5X. So a lot of companies ended up making kind of advertising jigs, and they're great advertising. When you walk into a shop and you see that giant jig hanging off the wall, it's pretty cool.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for taking an hour out of your busy day to be here with everybody. We are comparing.
Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate you helping me out with these books and getting some of these stories out there. And I look forward to meeting all of you guys that made comments at my booth at PCS.
And then if your book is on sale before the show, if you have them in time, we'll bring you back right before the show to be on the show. I would love for you to be here. I want to get a book. I want that book really, really bad, gang. And I know a lot of you out there are just waiting. So what I'll do for all of you, gang, as soon as Scott tells me they're ready to ship to you guys, we'll bring them on the show, hopefully before the PCS show. Get enough pre-orders to make the show even more fun.
Yes. And two questions I saw real quick. Baldies. So Baldies is actually the pre-section. They were in Newport and Costa Mesa. So there's a Baldy section. As I wrote, and I don't know how long some of you guys might be tuning in a little bit later, that I did a pre-1952 section. So Baldy's in that too. And Curtis, this is going to sound weird because I'm not a spoofer fan, although we all had one in our tackle box. The spoofer section is the best section of this book. The advertising I found from the 1950s is so awesome and classic and visual. The spoofer section is awesome.
We're not going to go right now. The spoofer, my dad started running sport boats in the late 40s. And in the 50s, when the spoofer came out, he told me we would troll the spoofers around to locate the barracuda. That was back when they didn't have a photometer. They didn't have a sonar. They had a flasher, so they couldn't really see. So the spoofer, that's chrome one with the single hook on it, it's the lamest looking thing in the world, but that's how they would locate the barracuda schools back in the 50s, in the early 50s. They had to troll spoofers. I was like, how could you troll those? there. They spin like crazy. I could never get the boat to go slow enough to troll a spoofer, but my dad swore that they saved his ass many days in a row trolling around catching barracuda.
Crazy.
Like I said in the show an hour or so ago, barracuda were the #1 fish in Southern California, gang. You guys, nobody likes them now. Nobody wants to fish for them, but man, when they showed up, you could not buy a spot on the boat. There were elbow to elbow, everybody heaving the iron. And that's where all these lure companies came from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's Devon or a Devo. It's funny because so I fished Cedros in August, and I actually brought down some of the jigs that you're seeing on this wall. And me and the guy that was in the boat with me, we have pictures of us fishing these jigs and catching fish on them. Nothing worse than casting a $150 jig, $200 jig, and all of a sudden you're fighting a 30-pound yellowtail, and all you care about is, please let me get this jig back. But yeah, we did fish a couple of them because I wanted to see if they could swim. I want to know if you know, an Explorer can swim. Let's see. I think I got an Explorer for you over here. There's a House of Jigs Explorer for you that we use down in Cedros.
Yeah, I just like the shape of that one.
Yeah. No. This is one of the. So if you know anything about House of Jigs, they are one of the most collectible jig companies, but every single one of their jigs is a copy of another company. One of the coolest things that's in this book is I did a key for like what this lure was copied off of. So it's like a key code to tell you what this jig came from.
Oh yeah, kind of like what you did in that Tady book. You did the same kind of thing in the Tady book. All those people that were counterfeiting those Taddies.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, gang. We'll wait for a couple seconds. If anybody has one more question, we'll take a couple more questions before we let Scott go. If you got anything burning desire you need to talk about, let us know. If not, understand that if the books are available before the PCS show, Scott will definitely be on here. What would be really cool is if you were able to get them out to people and you could bring them to the show and get Scott to sign them. These are going to be big deals. Coffee table books for anybody that fishes. These things are going to look so good in your salon on your yacht. These are going to look pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and somebody actually questioned me about there, like, hey, how many books are left of the Tady book? And by the way, my website, if you wanted the Tady book, guys, www.grayarrowpublishing.com, where you can still find the Tady book. But once the Tady book's gone, it's gone. It does not make financial sense for me to print another 1,000 and be sitting on those. So when they're gone, they're gone. I think I have like a little over 200, somewhere like 250 of the Tady books left. So to me, the Tady book will sell out in the next year. And the same with this one here, you know, once the 1,000 are gone, they're gone. So hopefully you guys all can make it to PCS. But this one will also be on my website once I
Again, you can go and look, all of you on YouTube, you can look at Scott Manson and I's podcast for the Tady book. You can go look at that right now. The QR code's up on the screen right now. When they're gone, they're gone. And what he just told you is it's not a number that is going to go on forever. So there's the QR code. Get them while they're there. Don't go, dang, I should have got one of those books last year. What are you waiting for? Just grab one real quick. There's the QR code up on the screen, gang. Grab that. Bring it to the PCS show. Get Scott to sign it. Bring it over to my booth. If you bring that book over, I'll give you some kind of free gift. I have plenty of stuff from my sponsors. Show us that you got the Tady Lures book. And if you bring in both books, you're probably going to get a shirt or a hat from your saltwater guide.
Hey, thank you. I
Hopefully
appreciate
they'll be available, Scott. Make your publisher get them to us quickly. All right, everybody. Thank you all. Is there any question that came up before we leave?
I don't think anything history related.
Oh, Bill Varney.
Yeah.
The great Bill Varney.
Ah, the clips.
You like the clip?
Yep. So
Okay.
I do. But you also have to know that there's a lot of people who are totally against it, including, you know, like Joey from Tady Lure, who is one of my really good friends. He doesn't like the clip whatsoever. He believes in tying that knot straight to the. But if you're going to be in a ponga and you're changing out jigs all day long or changing out lures, whatever, the clip can be really nice to be in and out of stuff pretty quickly. And there's some people that think that that clip gives the jig freedom to swing just a little bit more, that might add to the action. So I like the clip. I'm a clip guy.
Because I'm like the other guy. I'm like tying it straight. I think it gives one more thing to see, but it makes sense that it would make the jig swim better.
Yeah,
and nobody around, maybe you, Benny, nobody changes their jigs as much as you two guys. I mean, you guys are constantly, I watch those videos. You guys, okay. What did you just catch that on? Oh, it has a little bit of yellow in it. Look at it. Okay, I got to use this one. A little bit of yellow in it. All right, there we go.
Hey, if you look behind me, this is just a sprinkling that I pulled out for the show. I got too many jigs, so you got to use them all.
Oh, yeah, that is so cool. I wish I would have saved some. Darn it. Dave Burris, you're so funny. All right, everybody. Thank you all for watching the show today. Have a great weekend. I'll be back with you tomorrow. We'll be doing a recap tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning of what happened this week. Pretty much we'll be talking about the swell in the chocolate brown water, but that's kind of what the show's about. It's telling you what's going on out on the water. So I'll see you all tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thanks for watching today. Have a great day. Turn off the news. They're all lying.